Hey everyone. So today we're going to talk about a topic that is one of my favorites and something that I absolutely love to talk about. So we're going to talk about identity, okay? And the reason I want to talk about this is because it's something that is really important to me personally. And once I realized this, I was able to make a lot of positive change in my life. So when you think about your life and when you think about improving yourself and you know having better habits and becoming better and better every day, the single most important thing that I've seen has stopped me and also many other people from becoming the person that they want to is their identity, right? It's not their goals or their skills or any of those things as much as it is their identity, because it's their identity that sets the foundation for everything. So, what's identity? Identity is who you believe yourself to be, right? What you believe about who you are as a person. Now, I read this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's one of the most famous books out there for the last 5 or 6 years, actually, on building habits, right? And just personal development, self development in general. But the book is about building habits, and the core idea is that you know, in order to build habits, the most important thing to create habits that stick with you is making changes uh, at the identity level, right? So there's three types of change, or three levels of change that James Clay talks about. So you have outcomes, you have processes, and then you have identity. Identity. So identity is by far the deepest level of change and the most powerful, according to James Clear. So basically, what he says is that, as an example, let's talk about losing weight. The outcome that someone might think about in terms of getting healthy is losing 20 pounds. The process is going to the gym 4 to 5 times a week. But the identity is is what makes the difference. So identity could be, instead of I'm a fat person, which is what they currently believe, or I'm unhealthy, the identity changes. I'm a runner, or I'm a weightlifter, or I'm an athlete, or uh, I'm a healthy eater, whatever it is, right? So having that changed identity is what helps you eventually change your habits and take those actions that you need to take to become who you want to be, in line with what you believe yourself to be. And it's identity, because here's the thing: so many people, including myself, are not able to change certain things or do certain things or take certain actions because they believe themselves to be something that is not in line with who they want to be, right? So for example, if you look at the working out example, if you believe yourself to always be a fat person or an obese person or someone who just cannot lose weight no matter what, you know what's going to happen? You're not going to be able to lose the weight, because you'll go and try everything. You'll go to the gym, you'll work out, you'll try to eat healthy. But because you believe this subconsciously, you will find a way to end up overeating or end up skipping the gym, 3 4 times in a row, right? And then basically you're confirming your belief and your identity that, oh yes, you know what, no matter what I do, I can't ever lose the weight, or I can't ever be healthy, right? And the reason for this is that for us as human beings, certainty is very important. right? So it's very, very hard certainty and consistency, right? So it's very important for us to know who we are and for us to be consistent with that. So if you believe yourself to be a fat person, but you are doing things inconsistent with that, that's not going to work, right? Like we can only take actions that are consistent with who we believe ourselves to be. So you will naturally end up doing things that are consistent and in line with that belief of the fact that you're a fat person. And the other thing is that some people might be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to get rid of this belief that I'm a fat person, or cut out this negative thinking. The problem with that is you can't do that either, because it's very, very hard for us to be in a position of not knowing who we are. Because okay, it's like if I'm not a fat person, then who am I, right? Or if this is not who I am, then who am I? That unknown, that uncertainty is more painful and more scary than knowing the fact that okay, I'm a fat person, this is who I am, right? So it's better, it's almost better for the person to know that okay, I am really in this negative situation, or I'm this negative person, or I have this bad circumstance, than not knowing where they stand. So the only thing you can do is replace that belief with something positive, with something good, right? The other issue is people will over index to the positive side, or like say something that's completely not true and not believable, which makes them not able to act in line with that belief, right? So, for example, you know, changing how you see yourself and changing and choosing your identity does not mean, getting up and saying, "Oh, I'm a billionaire. I'm a billionaire," right? Because you're not a billionaire unless you are. Unless you're a billionaire and watching this, that's great. But the thing is, you're not a billionaire. And even if you keep telling yourself that, if you keep shouting affirmations at yourself, it's not going to make any sense, because you know that's not true, and you're not going to take actions to make that happen. So you will just revert back to who you really are. So instead of saying I'm a billionaire, you could start with saying, okay, like first thing, okay, what what does it mean to actually be a billionaire? Right? Most people don't even know what it means to be a billionaire, or what do billionaires actually do in their day to day, what their life actually is like, right? Maybe for most people, a billionaire is a very far fetched example. Maybe let's look at the example of a millionaire. For example, a millionaire is probably someone who does not waste their money on dumb, depreciating, you know, uh, items and assets. They spend their money, or they rather invest their money in themselves, improving their skills so that they can make more money, and then they can use that money to, uh, you know, buy stocks, buy a percentage of a business, or build businesses, right, which will help them make more money, you know, and help them make more money in a way that's not tied to their time. They're not making, not having to have to trade time for money. They're building something that is separate from themselves, that makes money on its own and doesn't require them to be, you know, trading their time, for a certain amount of money, etc. Right? So, point being, you could say, okay, I'm someone who invests money into myself and into uh, appreciating assets, right? That's the identity that you can take up, right? That's more believable. That's something that's more controllable. That's something that's more, uh, you know, in your spectrum of what's possible, right? If you just go around saying I'm a billionaire, that's probably never going to happen. So for me personally, I would say that there have been many times where I wasn't able to get past some sort of roadblock in life or get better at something. And I realized that it was an identity problem. It was an issue with who I believed myself to be and what I was doing, which was not in line, right? So, for example, I have a very good example. I, when I was younger, for the life of myself, uh, could not stop eating sugary stuff, you know? And I knew this was a problem because I was gaining weight and I was getting really fat and chubby. And I knew that, it was not exercise that was an issue. I would exercise a lot. I would like play a lot of football, etc. But I loved eating sugary stuff and I could not stop that, right? And no matter how much I would try, it would be very tough, right? Because I believe myself to be someone who just loves sugary stuff, and no matter what I do, I can't stop that. It's just like, uh, I have a sweet tooth, I have a weakness or whatever. But then I realized that if I believe myself to be, an athlete and a footballer, this isn't something I can do, right? And I started naturally doing that. Like before I even read this book, I naturally started doing it. Like, hey, you know what? I'm a footballer. I'm going to be a professional. I can't be doing this. I don't do this, right? Simple. It's an identity problem, right? And then it became very very easy. And I realized that I did this after, after I read the book. I was like, oh shit! So this is actually what I was doing, right? I was changing the whole conversation at the identity level, and this is sort of what had brought about the change or bring about the change. So it's really important for you to think about who you believe yourself to be and whether that is in line with what you need to do in order to become the person that you want to be, right? Because it's going to be very very hard for you to do those things and to do them consistently if you don't believe that you are that sort of person that does those things in order to become that person, right? That belief has to come first, right? And obviously you don't, like, if you go around shouting fake affirmations about ridiculous things, that's not going to work. But it's more so important to start very simply, right? If you want to lose weight and just get more healthy, chances are you're eating a lot of junk. Diet is probably one of the biggest problems with it. you know Maybe choose and decide, okay, I'm a healthy eater, right? I don't eat junk, right? Like, it's just not what you do because it's not who you are. Like, that's not who I am. Once you make that distinction, it becomes much easier to actually follow through with the actions, because you can keep trying to take actions, but inside of here, if you believe the opposite, it doesn't matter. You can try everything in the world, but you never will change. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. This is actually a topic that I love talking about, and uh, understanding this. So I read James Clear's book Atomic Habits. There's another book by uh, Tony Robbins called Awaken the Giant Within, and that also talks about the same sort of concept of identity, right? It's changing, making changes at the identity level. Anyways, great chat. See you soon.